Episode 123, easy as ABC. We'll have some good vibrations and some sweet sensations as we tackle the question of raising a child and if it takes a village. Our guest for the village is back at it again to discuss Marky Mark and the Brady Bunch film, Instant Family, for our Mother's Day lockdown episode on episode 123 of the Last Nighters. You can check it out at lastnighters.com/123 and also on the Launchpad Media, where they're always launching new ideas in your direction. Check it out at thelaunchpadmedia.com. This is Daniel Elwood. My co-host and hetero life mate is Robert Paul Johnson. And we are going to be interviewing, or is it really even an interview show here? I mean, we just have guests on and we talk nonchalantly about movies and kind of shoehorn in some philosophy and some Austrian economics occasionally here and there. But it is, of course, the lovely Rachel Kennerly of Cannabis Heals Me. And you were on most recently for The Village. You were on, I think, one time before that. I got a bad memory. I'm getting old. Maybe I've been hitting the cannabinoids a little too much. Just kidding. I'm as straight-laced as you, Rachel. But welcome back to the show. Why don't you remind everyone where they can find your work and what you do? Just a brief description, and we'll get into the Google description where we start talking about this movie.
Hey guys, you can find me over at Cannabis Heals Me, the podcast, cannabishealsme.com. Podcast, mom, wife, gardener, chicken farmer. That's pretty much it. That's my spiel. Oh, and if you need accounting work, I'm a CPA.
In the great state of Texas, or the formerly great state of Texas.
Exactly.
Talk about some of that in the pre-show bonus content available for Patreon supporters, lastnighters.com/Patreon. We had a good, 45-minute discussion of me having bad internet and dropping in and out, but also talking about the COVID and related shutdowns and the defiant salon owner in Texas who was unjustly imprisoned for, trying to feed her kids. But that's neither here nor there. Well, it is there. It's in the pre-show bonus content. But here we're talking about Instant Family tonight. And one of the reasons, I'll ask this as my first pointed question at you, is what made you suggest this movie, or did you suggest this movie? That's another question. I don't remember, because I think you have some personal experience or some related experience that might be relevant and give some specific and special insight into this one.
Yeah, I don't remember how the topic of this came up. Probably just one of our other BS sessions where it just kind of brought up movies that we like, and Instant Family's, I wouldn't say my favorite, but I enjoy the movie. And the reason I guess I enjoyed it is because my husband and I have adopted from foster care in the past. And in most adoption movies, it's like the kids are buttholes and then the people adopt them and then they're wonderful children. And that's not really the way parenthood is, period, let alone when you're parenting a child who has been in foster care. And so this Instant Family, it gives you kind of a real look into what life is like as a foster and adoptive parent, and what it's like having these strangers put in your home by other strangers, and gives you a really good realistic perspective on what it's really like to adopt from foster care. And so that's one of the things that I liked about it. It's funny, and some of the things that the characters in this movie experienced and some of the things that they thought and said were things that I have thought and said as a foster and adoptive parent. So it was nice to be able to think, it was nice to be able to see, okay, I'm not a terrible person for thinking that, and other people have thought it. So, it's kind of comforting to know that you're not alone.
All right, very good. And thank you for giving us that nice preface and the reason why we're doing this one. So I'm going to get into the Google description, and then I'll go to Robert for his reaction. So first, Instant Family came out in 2018. It's a comedy/drama film, 2 hours long, PG-13, 7.3 IMDb, 81% Rotten Tomatoes, 57% Metacritic, and 95% of Google users like it. When Pete and Ellie decide to start a family, they stumble into the world of foster care adoption. They hope to take in one small child, but when they meet three siblings, including a rebellious 15-year-old girl, they find themselves speeding from 0 to 3 kids overnight. Now, Pete and Ellie must try to learn the ropes of instant parenthood in the hopes of becoming a family. Came out November 16th of 2018. Director Sean Anders. Budget of $48 million. Box office of nearly $121 million, starring Mark Wahlberg and Rose Byrne and Robert. your response to the Google description and my singing that opened this episode, sir.
Well, your singing was awful. It was atrocious. Please never do it again. And it seemed like you wrote something for the intro, which I appreciated the effort. But as long as you don't sing it again, I can appreciate that. I am guilty of singing on this podcast. And the fact that I do it is bad enough. I don't think we should get into the habit. I know some people find it endearing. I don't know how. It's more like fingernails on a chalkboard. But I don't know. Maybe you've got some fans that really like it when you do horrible things like that. But anyway, this movie, I watched it on Amazon Prime. And that first page of reviews just reminded me that all you can do as an artist when you're making something is make something you're proud of. You can't make it to please anybody else because you never know what other people will like or not like, or what they are leaving looking for or whatever, because the reviews are either 5-star, great movie, loved it, all this stuff, or 1 star. And the reason they gave it 1 star is because, man, they took the Lord's name in vain in this movie. And so 1 star. And that's got to be like a failure of marketing, because I don't know if it was marketed as like a main Christian movie. It definitely didn't feel like a Christian movie. I don't even remember them going to church. I mean, at one point they pray over dinner. That's it. At no point other than that are they. I mean, maybe there's a few people talking about when they go to that first meeting, they're talking about whether God wants them to have children or not, or something like that. But it's really
a religious couple that was like.
Right. There's the one religious couple, but it's really kind of understated. It's not like, I mean, it's just like a normal American town, city. I mean, there's going to be a religious family and there's going to be whatever. It's a mix and match. It's not like a hardcore Christian message. So I don't know how the marketing convinced these people that this was going to be like the most straight-laced PG or G-rated movie of all time. And for them to be like, say, God or something, and, 1 star, no good. This thing is a piece of crap. It's just kind of funny because this movie's way better than 1 star. There's no way. I don't think it's a perfect 5-star movie, but it's definitely not a 1-star movie. This was a fun movie that had some serious drama. I don't know about you, but I got choked up at the end because there's some really good human moments. And it also shows the main 2 characters, the Mark Wahlberg character and the girl character that you just said the name. I can't remember it.
Rose
Byrne, who they really don't shy away from showing them as bad people or just flawed characters, which I really appreciated. They're not showing them as like these perfect, ideal parents that are just going to come in and save these kids and, make this wonderful family. I mean, they're very human, and the kids are human, and it's just it's a good human story. I did appreciate that, and it's it's got some funny moments, and yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of issues. I took a few notes, but I liked it.
All right, well, that's a pretty good solid open, and yeah, I agree, it was pretty good. The one thing that struck me was it was trying to strike this balance between being funny, but also having some drama or some heaviness to it. And I don't know, it just seemed like the contrast was a little bit, I don't know, like, what's the right word? It didn't really work quite right. Like the balance wasn't quite right for me, but it still wasn't like a terrible movie by any stretch. So Rachel, let's go to you for your take on Google description, my singing, and anything that Robert has said.
I guess I have to be honest. The singing wasn't the best, but I did like the intro. I thought the intro was nice, and then the singing. Once you started doing the intro, then the singing made sense. So
yeah,
but it wasn't terrible. I've heard worse. I used to do singing competitions when I was in high school, and I've certainly heard worse. So
not the worst. Just like this show is not only the best anarcho-capitalist film movie review show, it is also the worst anarcho-capitalist movie review show. because it's the only one.
Yeah. So anyway, my issues with this film. You want to get into it? What do you want to do? What do you want to talk about?
Man, we could get into issues, but there are a few things that I thought were like funny, and a few things that were funny, racy.
Ooh.
And by racy, I mean race-y. Yeah.
Well, first of all, do you guys think that this was a progressive movie? Because they kind of take the piss a little bit out of Mark Wahlberg when he starts talking about how he feels bad, like being the Avatar, right?
Yeah, the white savior.
Yeah, and so then they're like, okay, well then I'll just write down not white or right only or non-whites only or whites only.
They're like, no, don't do that. That would be, seen, of course, as terrible. I thought that was actually like probably the funniest part of the movie. And not only because they are taking the piss out of that, because it is kind of ridiculous, but also because, well, Mr. Wahlberg has a bit of a history. And it's apparently kind of forgiven, sort of like Joe Biden's history is kind of forgiven. I'm not sure exactly why. But, just check out his Wikipedia. Apparently, when he was a younger guy, he was involved in some criminal activity that was related to, quote unquote, hate. And somehow he gets a pass. I think, he was a young guy, probably made some mistakes. And now he's a bankable star and seems like he's, doing good stuff these days. So just put that out there.
I don't really know. I didn't know Marky Mark's sordid past. I just knew he was an underwear model and a singer.
Yeah, and that's bad enough. So
yeah, that's really unforgivable.
But so Rachel, you've adopted from foster, and in the movie they talk about how there's 500,000 kids in the system at any given time. Does that sound accurate to you? And what are some of the kind of the general ideas at play here? Like, I understand that, not every kid's in a good home, but aren't there some perverse incentives that basically inflate that number or make them get kids that maybe aren't actually in danger? I've heard similar to the, COVID stuff where they'll be reimbursed medically if it's a COVID diagnosis way more than if it's like any other diagnosis. And so it sort of has this financial incentive. I've heard similar things for foster and CPS and things like that, that while well-intentioned, you want something to be there as a safety net and you want to be able to fund these things, right? It sounds good.
Right.
But there's this, this perverse incentive that happens that maybe people aren't even aware of, that they're doing it because, oh, this means, we get our budget increased by $8,000 or whatever. So can you speak to any of that and how that relates to this movie? And I'm not trying to like crap on the system or people in general. I mean, because it's state run, I think it's inefficient and terrible. But I think that the service itself, the concept, would be something in, a free society that would still be a thing. And I'm sure it would run a lot differently. Yeah.
I did a little research because I wasn't sure what direction you guys wanted to go with the episode, but I did a little research, and I think there's like 440 some odd thousand kids in foster care. Now I know that there's a lot of allegations out there that say, oh, there's incentives to remove kids, financial incentives to remove kids. And maybe there are. I'm not able to, I don't have that information at my fingertips, and I don't want to go that deep down the rabbit hole. I'm sure there are some perverse incentives, but, I watched a TED Talk by this lady named Molly McGrath. I think she had CPS in Baltimore, and they were able to do a lot of work in Baltimore to kind of reform their system. And one of the comments that she made about the system is that, it's a system that people get these endorphins from saving a child. And so then they want to go back and they want to save more kids. And then eventually, they kind of get to a point where, it's more about saving kids or more about getting this rush of endorphins and being able to say that you've saved kids, as opposed to actually doing what's best for the kids. And sometimes the best thing is for kids to be left in their biological homes. I think 35% of the kids that are removed from homes are related. The parents have substance abuse issues with either illegal drugs or alcohol. And so you got a big swath of kids that are coming in, and sometimes even something as benign as cannabis. The kids will be taken away from the parents based on that, especially if you're living in more conservative states like Texas, where it's still illegal. You'll still have kids removed from the home over cannabis.
Do you have any episodes with guests that's related to that we could put on our show notes page?
Yeah, I had an episode with Krista McIntyre. She is with the Family Rights Advocacy. And what her organization does here in Texas is they actually work with parents who are under CPS investigation and let them know what CPS's rules are and remind CPS of what those rules are. And then they'll come alongside parents to work with them to help them prevent their kids from being removed from their home. Because that's a traumatic experience. If somebody comes in and rips your kids out of your home and it's not really necessary for them to do that, it's a horribly traumatic experience. I mean, even when it's necessary, it's traumatic, but to make it even worse when it's something that's completely and totally unnecessary. Whoops, my screen just went to sleep. Sorry. So, what they try to do is remind CPS, okay, here's your rule. Your rules are, we want to keep the children safe. And just because their parents use drugs doesn't mean that is an unsafe home. So if you check out episode 95 of the Cannabis Heals Me podcast, I've got that conversation with Krista McIntyre, and it's a really good conversation. We talk about what they do and then what CPS's role is supposed to be. And then also we discuss something that is a little more prevalent of late, which is like medical kidnapping. If the parents don't abide by what the doctor says that they should do, the doctors will basically stick CPS on them, and CPS will go in and remove the kids. We had an issue with that in Texas this summer, where a homeschool family had their son taken away from them because they wanted a second opinion from another doctor. And the doctor, I think at Texas Children's, but I'm not sure, he got upset with that. And so CPS showed up on their door and, in violation of what their rules are supposed to be, removed that child from their home, but left the other children in their home. They just removed this one that they considered to be medically fragile.
Yeah, I mean, it's a touchy subject, I think, because there are many kids who are in danger, but it also, I don't want to advocate for the state to be the arbiter of anything. So again, I think it would be a service or some kind of benevolent organization that would be able to remedy or assist in these kinds of issues in a free society. But man, it's got to be difficult, even if these people are all trying to do the right thing and all have the best of intentions. I just can't see that being a very clean or accurate system.
Right.
Well, and think of how many more, a lot of these problems that beset society are caused by government through so many unseen and seen factors, through perverse incentives, to making drugs illegal, to all kinds of things that really destabilize homes. And then you got a bunch of kids growing up in homes that are destabilized. And then the government comes in and offers the solution. And then the solution's bad. It's just problem, reaction, solution, and constant cycle of more need for government. It's disgusting. Yeah.
So intervention leads to more intervention, which begets more intervention to try to correct for the past interventions and things of that nature. Now, I actually do want to talk about the movie a little bit, and we don't get a whole lot of why kids are in the foster. But
I'm not saying that there wouldn't be situations that would need to be intervened in a free society. I'm just saying that any problems that are, especially on the tipping point, are exacerbated by government. And you think of how many jobs are lost due to, currently now, the government making jobs illegal. That's going to lead to destabilized homes and drug abuse and child abuse and all these other things that would cause reasons for children to be removed from homes. So,
well, they mentioned in the movie that the mother was, I guess her house almost burned down because of a crack pipe or something like that. There was a reference made to that in the movie, and that the older daughter had to kind of be the parent. And that happens a lot in foster care, where the older child is stepping into the role of the parent because the actual parent is incapacitated by drugs or whatever. And so that was real, what they said as far as the parent. And then, the older kids do, when they're in your home, that the older kids still try to keep that role as parent. They try to discipline the kids, or say, don't do this, or you do that. They still want to be the boss. I mean, we had a sibling group of 3 placed in our home, and the oldest child was 5, and she was used to being the mom. And so it was very difficult to try and help her see, hey, look, you can be a kid. You don't have to be the adult anymore. And it was hard for her to relinquish that role.
Sure. And it can also be difficult. I mean, I don't know how much these kids get kind of ferried around from home to home, but I can imagine that there's a whole lot of defense mechanisms in terms of connecting with people.
Yeah.
Because you're going to push them away before you get close to them, only to have them ripped away from you again.
Right.
Right.
And I like
so it leads to a lot of mentally and emotionally stunted people that are constantly have separation issues and want to push people away. And I think that was illustrated in the movie. At least that's what I saw when they were doing that hairbrushing scene. I was like, oh, she doesn't want to get close to this lady, because once you fall in love and love this mom, you're going to get ripped away again. It turned out to be that her mother brushed her hair, but I could just imagine that that's a lot for foster kids to have to deal with. And
yeah, we saw that with the bears too, because they would get a bear every time they would go to court, and he had this whole bag of them. So, I mean, he'd obviously been through this situation numerous times. And I don't know if that's because he's been in hearings related to his mother, or for other people attempting to adopt them. I wasn't clear on like why he would have to go to court so often.
Well, usually in the state of Texas, usually if kids are in foster care, you're in court. And now in Texas, the kids don't actually go to court. Some courts want the kids there, some courts don't. But the courts in Angelina County, where I am, they don't have the kids come to court. So like at least every 6 months, and I don't know if this is the law, and probably is. Otherwise, it probably wouldn't happen that often. So every 6 months, they have a court hearing related to the case and kind of update the judge on where the case is. And so if he's got all these court bears, and he's been in, I think it's just an indication that they've been in foster care for a long time. So if they're going to court every 6 months and getting a bear every time they go, then that's an indication of how long they've been in care.
Right. And probably moving around, like Robert was saying.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of, especially when you get a sibling group of 3, it's hard to find people that want to take that many kids. And then you've got an older one that's, kind of a smart mouth know-it-all. They may bump around a lot. And then you've got people like the Muskies in the movie that were fostering them. And it was pretty obvious that they were doing it for money. And that's actually absolutely true, is that there are people that foster just for the money. I mean, it pays pretty well. It's if that's what you're doing it for, and it's tax-free money. In the state of Texas, for a basic level kid, which is just kind of a kid without, that's not on psychotropic meds and doesn't have major emotional or behavioral issues, the reimbursement rate for foster parents is like $27 a day. So times 30 is a lot of money. I guess I should have run the numbers on that, but 27 times, I mean, that's basically,
Almost
$800, $700, $800 a month.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's tax-free money because you don't have to claim it on your income tax return.
Yeah. And the money end that I was talking about was that the CPS or whatever organizations would see money in their budget for every kid.
Right.
So that's the other side of it, right?
Yeah, that was one of and then in Texas, there's, you've got a child placement agency. You can foster straight through CPS in Texas, or you can foster through another organization, which is a child placing agency. And so for a basic level kid, the foster parent gets $27 a month per day reimbursed to them by the child placing agency, and they get a total of $49 a day. So they're making $22 a day for every kid in foster care. And the people in this movie, the the ladies, was it Olivia Spencer and I can't remember the other lady's name. They were pretty honest and upfront with the people that came to this foster meeting. You saw the two people get up and leave, but a lot of these child placement agencies are not like that. You know, the overriding goal of CPS when the kids come into care is reunification, to put them back with their biological parents, try and, you know, make it safe and then put the kids back with their biological parents. But that's not is what is explained to a lot of foster parents. So you've got some agencies that'll go into church and they see these hopeless, desperate people that don't have any children. And they'll say, well, come adopt from foster care. You can be foster parents and you'll be able to adopt a child. And they don't explain to them that CPS's goal is to put these kids back with their biological parents. So these kids come into care, go to these foster people who think they're going to be able to keep this kid forever. And then, you know, a few months down the road, the parents have worked their plan and the kids go back to their biological parents. And the foster family is devastated because they thought these kids would be there forever.
Yeah.
So you've got these agencies with financial incentives to, you know, basically trick people into becoming foster parents. And it's not good for them or the kids, honestly.
Yeah, we see that in the movie. It seemed like that they were at least told that it's very unlikely that the mother would even attempt to get reunification with the kids.
Right.
And it seems like a recipe for disaster because you've got all these people devoting time and energy and trying to build these relationships and do the best that they can and deal with all these issues that are related to the kids even being in the system for as long as they are, because like all the abandonment issues and the moving around, it's going to make them have all these defense mechanisms be difficult to manage and deal with, and have them trust you and even listen to you. I mean, I have enough hard time having my kids listen to me, and they love me. I mean, you know, every day is dad day.
Yeah.
You know, and I try to tell them like, hey, can today be mom day? Just please, you know, but you know, they
Mom is probably disagreeing with you right now.
Oh no, she knows almost every day is dad day. And so I've been trying to, you know, slough off a little bit of to mom days, but you know, as great as they are, and they are really smart kids and really good kids. And we try to do the best that we can, but man, it's trying as it is with kids you think you're raising the right way. And I can only imagine what it's like with kids who have been traumatized and with, you know, kids who have had these issues and then having that specter of, you know, potentially the parent, you know, maybe trying to get them back and then maybe failing like in this movie, because it's kind of hanging over their head. I mean, we see this in the movie where the mom starts to gaining visits with the kids, and then the kids behave differently for a period of time after that. And it's like causing this, is the right word, a schism or this chasm between the relationship that's being built.
Right.
Obviously the older daughter, she wants to reunify with the mom because, I mean, it's because it's her mom, but not because it's like a better situation for her, you know, or at least, I mean, it's subjective, so it's really hard to say, but like she probably is aware that the mom is not going to be able to provide like as nice of a home and as good of food and as, you know, as good of an environment, especially for the younger siblings. But she also subjectively wants to be with her biological mother because there's certainly a bond there.
Right.
But anyway,
I think the movie does a good job of showing that, because that is what it's like. You know, it's there's this pull with these kids. It's like, you know, we want to love you, and then we go and we see these people once a week or every other week, and while they're there with those people, they love them and they want to be with them. And then, you know, sometimes the parents, the biological parents, are doing everything they can to undermine the relationship that you've developed with the kids while they've been in your home. And it's there's jealousy between the biological parents and the foster family, because, you know, you feel this possessiveness, like those are my kids, and the biological parent is like, those are my kids. And it's like, well, and so as a foster parent, you're like, well, you effed up their life, and look at all these terrible things you did to this kid and what you didn't do for them, and we're trying to make that right. You know, the best thing for them is for them to stay with us forever. So there's this jealousy and this kind of back and forth. When my husband and I first started fostering the first the first few kids that were in our home were temporary placements. We knew when they came in that they would only be with us for a month. And so we were able to foster a relationship with their biological families that they were going back to, or, other biological family members, and able to, we gave them pictures because we wanted them to know that we're not these terrible foster parents that you hear about all the time. And so we gave them pictures and, tried to develop a relationship with them. But when you've got a child placed in your home where they say this is an adoptive placement and they're going to be yours, that totally changes the dynamic. You don't want to work with those people. You want those kids to forget they ever knew those people and only love you. So it just changes it.
Especially if you know, like, some of the story, right? And
yes,
how awful it is.
Yes.
Yeah, that other one where they're only with you for a month, that actually sounds like a pretty reasonable approach. Like, okay, this is temporary. They know it's temporary. Everyone knows. Everyone's on the same page, so that we're going to make the best of the 4 weeks or whatever it is.
Yeah, and even if it's only temporary, I mean, it's still excruciating when they leave. The first kids that we fostered were twins, and they were, like I said, they were with us for a month. And they were like 5 and 6 pounds when they were placed with, so they were itty bitty.
Wow.
And between the lack of sleep and because they didn't sleep all night, by any stretch of the imagination. So I mean, I've never cried so hard in my life when they left, and they were only here for a month. And then the next little girl, she was with us for about a month, and that was really hard too. But we were able to make those connections and we're able to actually stay in touch with those kids now that they've gone back to their biological families. So, we were fortunate in that, the people in CPS were surprised that we were able to form a relationship with the family and still keep in contact with them even after the kids went back. But it's certainly not always that way. And it's definitely not that way when you have kids placed in your home and people say these kids are going to be yours. That totally changes your willingness to work with their biological family.
Yeah. All right, Robert, I want to loop you in a little bit. I'm sure you have some feedback for what we've been talking about. And then once you're ready, I have a pointed question for you.
Oh, okay. Because all I got is questions. But I was wondering, in the film, when the main characters, they want to adopt these kids, they're like, okay, you can adopt, but you have to take this class. And preparing them for the challenges that they face. I'm wondering, Rachel, did you have to do this also? And if you thought that it was a positive experience that accurately prepared you, I mean, it's not going to prepare you for everything, but did you think it was a necessary step?
It is. You do have to take classes. Now, did we form a bond with the other people that we were in classes with? No, because, I'm kind of an introvert. So I'm not trying to find a best friend when I'm there. You do kind of develop some friendships, but they're just kind of superficial. Hey, how you doing? It's not and we didn't have monthly meetings. That's not something that they offer here. But yeah, there are classes that you have to take. You have to take classes on administering psychotropic medication. Even if you don't have a child in your home that takes psychotropic medication, you have to take CPR, first aid and CPR, and then, learning about paperwork that you have to fill out if you have a kid that breaks their arm. Like the kid in the movie, he winds up with a staple putting a nail in his foot. And I'm like, well, there's an incident report. But CPS does not show up at the hospital with you. That's that's complete fiction right there. Because we had a little girl that broke her arm, and I ended up having to take her to the ER, and nobody showed up at the hospital to sit with me for an hour while I waited. But yeah, I think it gives an accurate portrayal of what it's like to become a foster parent and then to adopt. So yeah, definitely the classes are totally legit.
Okay. And you think that would be something that would be required in a free society?
I think so, because a lot of the focus has shifted in the last couple of years to be more like there's a lady named Karen Purvis. She passed away a couple of years ago, but she has this different approach to foster care called trust-based relational intervention. And it's basically a way of seeing past the behaviors and trying to figure out what's causing the behaviors and address the root cause of the behavior, as opposed to addressing you're focusing your attention on the behavior, what's driving it. And so, and then you learned a lot about trauma and how that affects the brain, because trauma can delay development of a child. Maybe you've got a 15-year-old in your home, but emotionally they're 10 years old. So you're looking at this teenager expecting them to act like a 15-year-old, but they can only act like a 10-year-old because that's all they're capable of doing. And so, some of the classes are better than others. It depends on how good the teacher is, just like anything else. Some of it is like, I've been in classes where I'm like, okay, I could teach this so much better than the person standing up there lecturing me, because they aren't even pronouncing the stuff correctly and they're not explaining it correctly. So is the state really good at explaining it? No, but we actually sat in classes with Karen Purvis and went to, voluntarily went to things to try to equip ourselves as foster and adoptive parents and learn from the very people who created this program. And they're so much better communicators than somebody making $30,000 a year trying to teach, who've never had foster kids in their home, trying to teach foster parents how to treat kids in their home.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask this question. I think, to Rachel. I'm going to borrow a bit from Stephen Colbert. Not a guy that I agree with politically, but he's still pretty funny. As a reason to adopt, being able to shove it in your smug relatives and friends' faces, is that the best reason to adopt, or just a really, really, really good reason to adopt?
If you want to achieve sainthood in other people's eyes, adoption is a pretty good way to do that. So,
just showing everybody else how virtuous you are.
That's right.
That was really what they were doing.
That's the ultimate virtue signal, is to go out and adopt. That's totally the reason why you should adopt from foster care.
Well, that was what they initially started doing, and then they found it was going to be difficult, and then they got doubted. And they're like, well, now we're going to do it just to spite you and prove you wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. But the funny thing is that the family reaction is, their extended family's reaction is actually pretty accurate. Not everybody that is in your extended family is going to agree with your decision to adopt. And a lot of them are think, well, you're adopting damaged goods, so we don't want them to be around our kids, our real kids, so it's not an uncommon reaction for extended family to be like that. So, I really found a lot of the stuff that was in this movie to be realistic. We were very blessed. Our extended family has always been very opening, very welcoming and warm to the kids that have been in our home, either as adoptive or foster placements. We've never really experienced what they experienced, but there are other people that have severed relationships with their biological family because their biological family was not able to accept their adoptive kids as their own and embrace them as truly, their grandkids or whatever.
Wow, that sounds awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a podcast that I listened to, and that it's, I think, I don't want to say, I can't remember her nationality. But her mother just was not able to accept her adoptive kids. And she basically just, she already kind of had a strained relationship with her mom anyway. And she basically just said, look, no, I'm not doing this. These are my kids, regardless of what you say or what you think. And I'm not going to let you treat them like second-class citizens. And she ended up ending, just cutting off the relationship with her mother.
Wow. Well, I wanted to jump off this just a little bit and just say that scene with the family was actually one of my favorite scenes, because they do another kind of jab at, I guess I'd say the normies or the SJW types, when they say, hey, we had to listen to you talk about the deep state for 30 minutes. You can listen to us talk about this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a nice little jab in there. And then, Robert, this was the question I had for you. Did you see and identify with the Wahlberg character as being a fixer? Like, he was treating these kids like they're a Reno my Reno, they're like a house to like refurbish and try to resell. And I know that we've had conversations about this, probably going decades back now, about how a lot of times the guy in the relationship will want to fix the problems that the girl brings up, but the girl doesn't want a solution. She just wants to talk about the problems. So
she just wants her feelings validated. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. And I'm totally guilty of this. My wife will start piping up about something and I'll be like, all right, do this. She's like, no, I don't want you to tell me what to do.
Just shut up and listen. I need a vent.
There's a scene when the Mark Wahlberg and the wife there go to the first seminar, right? And Mark Wahlberg starts talking about rescue dogs. And he's like, maybe if you called them rescue children. Yeah, I loved it because he was like, I'm going to fix your problem. I'm going to solve this whole thing. And I'm going to make adopting kids like a new hip thing that everybody's going to want to do. And all the kids are going to get adopted. And I'm just going to, it's a marketing thing. I'm just going to fix you. I thought that was a great little scene from what a guy would say, because that's something that I would say. You ever thought about doing it this way? Like this system that's been around for decades and centuries. And you're just like, I'm going to fix it. That was a great, real man line to make. But yeah, throughout the whole movie, he is the fixer. They are fixers. They buy houses and they fix them up. And I think they see the kids as a project at first, and that they're just really good at it at first. And then, then the cracks show, and then things get hard and they bail. They want to bail, and then they hate the kids and they just want the virtue points.
I love their attempt to bail was going to get them even more virtue points. Yep. Well, let's just say that it fell through, and then we'll get all the pity points.
Yeah, that to me was probably the funniest part of the movie, because I've been there when I'm like, golly, and not with my son now, but more with other kids that we've had in our home. And it's like, we just get all the crap, it's like, how can we get out of this? And, and then you realize ultimately, you're not going to do that because you love the kids and you don't really want them to go, but they drive you crazy, and really being hamstrung by CPS and how you can handle them is frustrating as well. But, that's probably the funniest part of the movie to me. It's like, because I've thought those exact same things. And I think my sister-in-law, they've adopted from foster care as well. And so we can kind of talk to each other. These are things that we would never say out loud to anyone, because they would think we were terrible people if we said them out loud. But we're able to kind of vent to one another and say things. And it's like, they were listening to a conversation that she and I had in private. And, it really resonated with me, because I've been there and thought those same things.
Well, from a screenwriter's perspective, it's a pretty brave scene to have your main characters talk openly about getting rid of these kids and that they just want the virtue points. It's a really unlikable thing to do. And it's only something you can put in after you've already established that they're pretty good people. You can't put that out at the beginning of the movie. No. And the audience would not be on board with these douchebags. But you put it in the middle of the movie after they've had this hardship, and you can kind of understand it.
They double down on that with when the judge reads the girl's complaint against them. Like, the facts are you did this, 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 and this, and they're all terrible things. And they don't let them rebut any of it or explain any of it, which I had a problem with that. Like, okay, how fair is it that you can't even explain the circumstances around something? That's
you take it out of context and it sounds pretty terrible. Like, did you assault this kid in this school? Yes, I did. Right. End of story. Facts.
Yeah. Really, that's a pretty accurate portrayal, because when you go to court as a foster parent, you have zero rights. You don't get to be heard by the judge. Your opinion doesn't matter. The fact that these kids have been in your home for 2 years, and you know them in the longest they've ever been in any home before, and you know them better than anyone else on earth, you have zero input whatsoever.
Yeah, that's another flaw then,
Yeah. Nobody asked for your opinion. I gave it, but, ultimately my opinion didn't matter. So, but I still told them what I thought for all the good it did.
Yeah. All right. So we just sort of got to this point where we can sort of bring this up. They assaulted this kid who's a 22-year-old kid. Or no, they actually first assaulted Charlie, who's like a 15 or 16-year-old. But then they went after the janitor. Robert, I want to direct this to you.
Oh, yes.
This was one of the
Spicy.
things that I felt like was had more weight to it, like a more of a. This isn't a comedy exclusively now. They're talking about a relationship between what is she, 15 and a 22-year-old. Now, we've talked about age of consent and things like that, and it seems like kind of take the Dave Smith angle on this, even though I sort of had it before I heard it from Dave, but it's like, all right, well, we can all agree that somebody who's 50 years old can make this decision, and we can all agree that someone who's 8 can't. So there's somewhere, in that range, and it's going to be different depending on the situation, the person, and the maturity and intellectual capacity, whatever, whatever the criteria are, where it's going to be a bit subjective for each person. But in this movie, they certainly just take it at face value: 22, 15, bad, illegal. So just, I don't know. I don't know how to direct this question, but did you find that was kind of like a legitimate response for Wahlberg to go after the guy and like punch him and to intervene in that situation? I mean, there was, exchange of dick pics and whatnot, and it's a tough question. I mean, I'm gonna have to deal with this kind of shit in like 10 years, right? 15
Yeah,
years.
well, this is definitely a response that is heavily dictated by culture. I mean, you go back 1,000 years and nobody's even going to bat an eyelash. I mean, kids are getting married at 12 and 13.
Right, and they're dying at like 26.
Yeah, or they're getting married to adults. They're getting married to 30, 35-year-olds. I mean, if you go into the Mormon church, this is commonplace and happens all the time. And nobody bats an eye today, let alone 100, 200 years ago. So obviously the movie sets it up that the janitor guy is this creeper dude who's kind of preying on this dumb kid. But I would say that the kid is pretty savvy. And I would say that the main parent characters don't necessarily really know her that well. But I mean, at the same time, they are her guardian, and she is not a fully featured adult person, and they are responsible for her. So I don't necessarily condone them, assaulting the guy and beating the crap out of him, which is why the cops get involved and they actually arrest them too, because it's not necessarily, self-defense in any way. But I also, not totally against it either. I mean, if that's my daughter and that guy's doing that, I might very well act the same way and be like, well, I guess I acted immorally there, but that's just the way it's going to be. It's very culturally dependent. You go to any time, 1,000, 2,000 years ago, and this is happening all over the place all the time. And with the willing consent of the parents that are like, yes, please take my 12-year-old daughter, Mr. 40-year-old man. She's going to have a better life with you. And this is going to move us up the political ladder or whatever, the status symbol of the society, and all kinds of reasons people do it. But yeah, it's almost like it's a very privileged argument to make. It's like today and age when a kid has enough wealth to be a kid and they don't have to work when they're 12 or 10 to help put food on the table. They don't have to get married off when they're 13 because they're going to die when they're 23. It's like we have this wealth and this medical ability to keep people alive that has created a very privileged society. And so it's developed this culture where a kid is still a kid at 15.
Yeah. I like that angle, actually, that inception argument where you go further left than the left. You like take their argument of privilege and you turn it in on itself and be like, well, actually the privilege is that they can actually be a kid at 15 and that they're not going to die at 25 or whatever, because that's the average age in when the 1100s or whatever. So yeah, that's actually a pretty good take. I was kind of torn on. I was sort of rooting for Wahlberg to kick that guy's ass because, well, they portrayed the janitor guy as a creep who's definitely taking advantage of a situation and a young girl. But she's also very mature in some ways. She's very capable of handling herself, but she's also traumatized or damaged in many ways as well, like emotionally scarred. Probably has some attachment issues and all of those things. So, but I mean, who doesn't, honestly? So yeah, it's just it
Indeed.
was interesting to see that, but that was some of the gravity of the movie that didn't fit well for me with the comedy of it. So it kind of like made the movie juxtapose itself when I was
Well,
watching.
what did you think, Daniel? Since they were assaulting the guy, they were putting not only themselves obviously at risk, but the kids in the car.
Mhm.
Oh yeah,
Right?
they totally had
They were
blinders.
neglecting those kids in the car by going after the guy. So
Not-
honestly, if they were good parents, they would have had just Mark Wahlberg. Okay, you go beat the shit out of that guy, and I'll be the mom, and I'll take care of the kids back in the car. Right?
Yeah, so I think what's depicted there though is that they are not even aware any longer. They're so blinded by the anger that they're not like even considering that the kids are still in the car. They're just like so focused on what the fuck,
Right.
handle this.
But
And
it's clearly a parenting fail, right?
Oh,
I mean,
definitely.
how many times in the news media do you see kid gets left in car dead, in the hot sun, dad's devastated, but he's still going to jail, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. I've seen stories like that in Texas, Walmarts in Texas and things like that. But
Mhm.
I've also seen the other side where somebody actually literally ran inside somewhere for 1 minute and then the police were there. So it's like, all
Mhm.
right, well, again, there's some level where, it's okay. But where that line is, I don't want the state making that decision.
Now, before we run out of time here, I do have one last note. I am such an anti-authoritarian, and I assume that there would be, private courts in the free society. But at the very end of the film, when the judge, it's supposed to be this happy celebratory scene, and I am kind of tearing up because it is happy, and I am glad that they're all together and whatever. But this judge starts talking, and he's like, "By the authority vested in me by the state of California, I now pronounce you a family," or something like that. And I'm like, fuck you. You don't get to decide who's a family or not, you piece of shit. They decide who's a family or not. But in some sense, obviously the kids can't decide. They don't have the judgment to decide what's best for them necessarily. So somebody would come along and I guess, voluntarily or whatever, say that these people are the best people for you to be with as these children. But something about that authority vested in the state of California and me, I now declare you a family, really chapped my hide. Did anybody else react to that? I don't know.
Yeah, that got me too. And also that he had been such a dick to the foster people earlier. And then all of a sudden now he's like super goofy, nice guy who's like, oh, I'm going to play some like peppy music and we're all going to stand up and get a picture together. Just that also rubbed me the wrong way because it's like, all right, this guy was an asshole, in the previous scene where we saw him. And now you're going to make him out to be this like clown character where he's like this great guy. And sorry.
That's just the way judges are, though. I mean, they expect everybody to be very deferential to them.
Yeah, they do. No, they all have a stick up their ass about how you have to respect them and bullshit like that.
Yeah.
Just like the judge in Dallas.
Indeed. Which we spoke about in our pre-show content available for people on Patreon.
That's right. Yeah. Way to sell it. Yeah. And it actually was a really good discussion, even though I dropped out a couple of times. But that actually probably improved it because I wasn't around to like, I don't know, speak some nonsense and derail things like I usually do on the show. So Rachel, I know I also had experience with my kids getting gifts and liking the boxes more than the gifts. Is that a thing that you've also experienced? Because that rang true to me in this movie. Like they could care less about what was in the box. They want to build something, some imagination with the box. And this goes back to something that Robert and I have talked about a lot, where in a movie, like even a horror film, or especially a horror film, it's what you don't see that's scarier than what you do see. And so the toys, the more realistic they are, or like the computer video games, like the more realistic they are, it's cool, but the more you have to use your imagination and embellish a little bit, you're more involved and it's more like a subjective experience. And I feel like that was maybe what was happening with the kids was they were using their imaginations with these boxes and doing something creative, sparking different areas of the brain rather than just this pleasure center, but also creativity center. And I'm totally fucking this up, but do you did you have the same reaction and what's your take on it? And do you think it's kids in general, or was there something about foster kids? Because I think it's meant to show us as an audience, like, hey, these kids are so disadvantaged that they're happy just having boxes. But I don't know if it's, really like what's going on. I think it's, the creativity and all that.
I think it's just kids in general. I mean, we've never had an experience like that, but it's like you get a toy and you spend all this money on it and you think that's going to be his favorite. And then it ends up being some $5 dollar store toy that his aunt brought him. That makes fart noises that he loves more than anything else. So I mean, I think that's just kids in general. We try to make things so complicated in this consumer driven world that we live in. We think we have to spend the most money on it, and really they can find pleasure in very simple things. One year my parents got us laundry baskets for Christmas. Now we were poor, but we weren't so poor that my parents couldn't afford to get us like real Christmas presents, but we were always playing in my mom's laundry basket. And so they bought us laundry baskets for Christmas one year, and we had the best time with those, making trains and boats and sliding them down the stairs of the house, So we just try to make things so much more complicated for our kids and more expensive for our kids than we have to. We try to give them everything that we never had as kids, or we think that they've never had as kids, and really they can find joy in the simplest of things.
Yeah.
And it may have been a commentary on the fact that, these kids haven't really had a lot. And so what they enjoy playing with is what they are used to playing with. Maybe they only got boxes in the past. I don't know, but I think we just try to make things more complicated than it has to be.
Well, my kids love boxes, and we're constantly like, okay, fine, you can play with this one. And then they'll do something where they'll wrestle with each other, and like someone will get hurt and cry. And then we're like, all right, we're getting rid of the boxes. They're going to recycling.
I mean, my son has had tons of fun with boxes. I mean, not that he would give up all of his toys to play with the box, but there have been times where, if we got a new refrigerator or something, he was so excited. He and the other kids were so excited to play with the box because it was a big, huge box and they could color on it and cut holes in it and make it a house out of it.
Yeah. So Robert, this ringing true for you at all? Do you remember growing up and like using your imagination for play was better than like the cool toy?
I definitely remember using my imagination as a child for sure. I think you made an excellent point. As video game graphics get more realistic and as CGI in movies gets more realistic, it does become less of a subjective experience, and you do have to use your imagination less. And yeah, I think maybe that part of our brains is kind of dying out, and we're just kind of like seeing and reacting to what we actually see as opposed to using our imaginations. I don't know. But yeah, as a child, I don't remember a whole lot. As I get older and older, those memories kind of fade. I remember having certain toys and really enjoying those. I don't necessarily remember all the cardboard boxes I played in, but I do know that my sister's kids, there was definitely a cardboard box phase for sure. Absolutely. I don't think it's now. I think they've kind of grown out of that now. Can you believe it? My nephew he's like 6 years old and he's programming video games already. I played one of his video games like a couple days ago.
That is pretty impressive.
That's awesome.
My kids love the Wildcrats right now. So they know all of these facts and things about different animals. And they're huge fans of it. So now they want to like entrepreneurially start a business where they're taking care of like wild animals and rehabbing them to release them back into the wild and all this stuff. And like, well, if there's money in it, go for it.
There ain't no money in that. Yeah. Not to pop their bubble.
Well, the what was it? The Black Rhino made a comeback from private ownership and the actual private replenishment effort. So maybe there is room for that in the future.
Maybe so.
Who knows? I'll try to find that story and put it on the show notes page at lastnerds.com/123. Got my good vibrations. Sweet sensations. Hey, was the girl the girl in the movie? Was she the one in the song?
That's the credits said. She was singing.
Yeah, I think so.
So she is the one from the Funky Bunch?
What?
Is she you remember the Funky Bunch video, the Good Vibrations, Marky Mark, the Funky Bunch video? He's got the abs.
Oh, I
And
thought it was some fat lady.
Yeah.
And
The
they
black
had some
lady
skinny
singing?
girl do it in the video. Is that what you're talking about?
Oh,
Not
What
the
the hell
girl
are we
from the
talking
movie?
about?
You're right. Yeah. In the video. Yeah. There was like this, they used some
It's
other
like the whole
person's body to
Milli
remind
Vanilli.
them. Yeah. Okay. I remember that. Yeah. It was controversial. Yeah. Because there was like this.
Now, I heard about that. I didn't hear about anything else that Marky Mark did off the screen.
Yeah. There's a whole section on the Wikipedia about hate crimes. I don't want to besmirch the guy. I think he's a good actor. I like him, but yeah, he had a rough history. Anyway, yeah, that was my Good Vibrations. The singing yet again.
Excellent, Daniel. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Start to close out the show. All right. Any last notes? I have a note here. I missed the rut, and I do feel this. I do experience this with my own kids. My wife and I were married for a couple of years before we had kids, and we remember being bored and having time to just waste and not do anything, and now I'm like kicking myself, like, why didn't I read that book or do this thing or that thing? Because now I don't have time.
Mhm.
I miss the rut. I miss that time. And I know a lot of people are kind of experiencing that now with the quarantines and the stay-at-home orders where they have all this extra time and whatnot. I don't experience that because my work is actually busier than it's ever been. And the kids are home all the time versus usually they leave 2-3 times a week and go do something, go swimming or go to the children's museum or the library, go visit friends, whatever. That's not happening anymore. So now I'm around, and my office, I'm in it now, but I haven't been working in it for the past month and a half because we had chicks out here and it's like covered in chicken shit and dust and everything. So I've been in the house. So it's been like, I've been busier than I've ever been, but I do miss the rut. I do miss the before kids. I do miss the being bored. I do miss the being able to sleep in. I haven't slept in past, 7 a.m. in years at this point. Sleeping in until 7 is like considered sleeping in. So I just wanted to get your reaction, Rachel, because I know Robert is still feeling that bachelor lifestyle that at the time I was like, wow, this sucks. But now I'm looking back on it fondly.
Well, my son is actually gone. We shipped him off to Nana and Papa's on Sunday. So he's in Missouri right now. And so it's kind of like it was before, because my husband and I were married for 18 years before Skylar came into our lives. And so it was a lot of quiet, do what we want to do type evenings. And it was a difficult transition because you go from doing what you want to do. Not that we really did a whole lot, but we could watch what we wanted to watch and whatever else. And now you can't really do that because you've got a very active 3-year-old in your home that likes to be entertained. And so it's been kind of nice this week to just kind of sit and relax. And it's quiet because he talks nonstop. He's a great kid, but he talks nonstop. We were sitting in the living room the other night or the other day while his dad was at work, and he said, all of a sudden it just got quiet. I'm like, yeah, that's because you quit talking. And that doesn't happen all that often. So, we
got the two of them, and Robert's been over here, and he has to take breaks because it's like nonstop because there's one talking and then the other and then the other and it's nonstop. And we had the neighbor.
And then one's climbing all over you while the other one's trying to show you something, and then another thing, and then another thing, and then another thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like that all the time, man. It's
and then
sensory overload.
Yeah, absolutely. We Skylar came to our home in January. And then like in October that same year, we had a sibling group of 3 placed with us. And at the time, Skylar was 5, and the sibling group of 3, they were 5 and under. So we went from 0 kids to 4 kids, 5 and under.
Instant family.
Absolutely. And it was, it was sensory overload because they were very loud. And then they tried to talk even louder to be louder than the other kid. And it's just, I watch videos because even with just Skylar, it's still quieter than it was when we had 4. So I go back and I watch videos and I'm like, gosh, I had forgotten how loud it was in our home. So I can imagine if someone came over to our home, because I guess you just tune it out after a while because it's survival. If you don't tune it out, you'll go crazy. So for people to come over and just be in that chaos. I'm sure it was not a pleasant experience for them at times. It wasn't pleasant for us sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the one great thing I'm looking forward to is being a grandparent eventually. A long time, girls, a long time from now. It's the as soon as it gets overwhelming, hand them back.
Yep. That's definitely the nice thing about it. Of course, we live with our mother-in-law, and so she doesn't get a break anymore, but she stays on the third floor, so she can go up there and get a little peace and quiet.
Yeah. Yeah. When Robert was here, he would come to my office where he was staying and need little like 5-minute breaks. Pretty frequent.
Yeah.
Every
you
10
can lock the door, which is awesome. And
Yeah.
you can close the drapes. So if they don't know you're in there, you can hide for a little bit before they find you, which they inevitably will. But at least you get a few minutes there of quiet and peace.
Yeah.
I can remember with all 4 kids, because I worked in, I'm a CPA, and I worked in a public accounting firm. And so during tax season, we worked really long hours in the evenings and then on the weekends as well. And I can remember getting up on Saturdays and my husband, bless his heart, being glad I had to leave to go to work because it would be quiet there. And poor Charlie, he didn't get that break, unfortunately.
All right. Well, now is the time, I think, to talk about any final notes. We're already actually a little bit long on time. Or we can get in a final summary review. And Robert, somebody listened to our Finding Nemo episode from a couple of years ago and gave me feedback. That was a Father's Day episode that we did. And I actually re-listened to it again just because it had been brought up. And I was like, wow, that was actually a pretty good episode. So the guy who was on, Jeremiah, he would make a good guest. I think we should have him back on sometime. But anyway, the guy who listened to it and then reached out to me was like, hey, so do you guys always do this like black and gold rating? I'm like, oh no, that's like old school. That's like nostalgia. We don't do that anymore. Now we do this like lame out of 10 decimal point deep thing. And I was like, you know what? Maybe we need to bring back the black and gold. So I'm going to bring back the black and gold for my score tonight. But are there any final notes before getting summary and review?
This is how easily influenced Daniel is. Like one person says he should do something, and he's like, yes, sir, boss, I will do this. Excellent idea.
I'm like Dory from Finding Nemo. Like, what? Oh, okay. Yeah,
sure.
Let's do that. Okay. What?
All right. So who wants to go first?
So there's no final notes. Is that
final notes? I was going to wrap them into my final review. So
all right, go for it.
You got notes? Oh, okay. All right, here it goes. So I know when you're a screenwriter and you're trying to write a movie, you're going to make choices. It's a process of what you want to focus on versus what you don't. And this film, I think, definitely did a good job focusing on certain characters, even though it's more of an ensemble piece, but it really does focus on the 2 main parents and then the teenage daughter. And I think it really develops and works on those characters really well. The only issue I had with the characterizations in this film was the son. The son was just a prop to do stupid shit. That's all he was. There was no development there. He was just there in the scene to do something stupid so that everybody else could react to him and cause drama and whatever. And he was completely ridiculous. And I kind of wish he had at least a little bit of a character in the film. But for the most part, it was well done. I laughed, I cried. And it was overall just a really well human story. I don't think it was like the most amazing acting I've ever seen, but it was solid and competent. The plot was a little bit, by the numbers, drama. Kids don't like them. They're great kids. They're bad kids. Are they going to get to keep them or not? Yes, ultimately they do, of course. But what are you going to do? You can lean into the melodrama. You can lean into what you expect and still entertain your audience, even if you're not creating something like amazing, groundbreaking auteur style filmmaking. This is something that is made to appeal to a wide audience for the most part, and I think it succeeds. So I'm going to give this movie a 7 out of 10. and recommend it to people that are interested, unless you are heavily offended by the Lord's name being taken in vain, because I think you would not enjoy this movie at all. I don't even remember. See, I'm so immune to it. It's like, are you kidding me? Somebody saying the word God or something is like not even on my radar. If they could have said it 50 times in this movie, they could have said it once in this movie. I don't know. But apparently it was too many times for some people. So if you're sensitive to that, don't watch this film. Otherwise, check it out.
All right, so I'm gonna translate your score into my old school scoring system, and that's a gold, not a solid gold, not a super strong gold, but still gold. And I'm gonna agree, this is a gold film. I think it's pretty good. It's entertaining. It does have, you know, sort of that weird dichotomy of it's trying to be comedic and it's trying to be dramatic, and I think it loses me a little bit there. But I think for the most part, Wahlberg and Rose Byrne do a pretty solid performance, and I think the kids do a pretty fine job. I think you're right about the son. He is just kind of a prop to be like, used for comedic effect, though he's also like supposed to be this like kind of shy, emotional one who's not real. He's not really found himself just yet, so he is sort of just like a prop, and that's kind of the character. But I thought the daughter did a really good job of being like this rebellious teenager. And I know we didn't really talk about this too much, but it did kind of strike home to me that it would make sense that similar to when people go to the pound to get a dog, they look for the puppies, and the puppies sell out first. And then it's the older dogs that kind of get the sympathy, and it's like the middle dogs that nobody wants to get. And so I could see that you know, those older kids would be harder to find foster or adoptive homes. That made a lot of sense to me. As far as the plot goes, I mean, it kind of just felt like this is an adoption story. There's nothing like super standing out about it. I know it was based on a true story, and I think it was the director's experience of going through the adoption process, but nothing really stood out to me as why this is like different than any normal kind of adoptive situation. I mean, I'm sure they're all, you know, unique in some way, but I didn't see what made this one the one to make a movie about. So that kind of left it with not knowing why they made the movie. Like, why did this stand out? It kind of makes me downgrade it just a bit, though still gold, just a little tarnish on it. But yeah, so that's kind of my take on it. It's a good movie. It's recommended. It's got some funny parts. It's got some decent performances. I don't understand why it's a movie, and the mix between the drama and the comedy didn't really flow for me. But Rachel, we'll go to you, and unless anyone else chime in and shut down my my scathing review here.
Well, is it black or gold for you?
It's gold. It's like a tarnished gold.
Gotcha. Well, the guy that wrote the script, he is an adoptive parent. And I think probably the reason that he wrote this, I don't know for sure. I did listen to a podcast that he was on, and he talked about writing the script. And of course, I've slept since then. And I have the memory of a gnat. So he probably explained why he wrote it. But my thought is that, you know, adoption is dear to his heart. And so he wanted to put something out to maybe encourage other people to consider adopting through foster care or whatever. So I'm guessing that's the why. And I think as an adoptive parent, I think they did a good job of being realistic instead of making people think that these kids are going to be perfect and that life is going to be perfect. And it's like, no, you know, sometimes life sucks. I mean, it sucks even if you have biological kids sometimes, you know. But I think they present it in a way that's pretty realistic. And I think you can watch this movie and go into it and kind of be prepared for what you're going to face when you enter this. I mean, it's not going to 100% prepare you, but it's going to prepare you better than some of these child placement agencies that say, oh, come foster through us and you'll be able to adopt a kid yesterday. So I think it gives people a good perspective on what it's like to be in the foster through through CPS for the most part. But I enjoy it. We bought the movie. I thought it was. This is May is actually National Foster Care Month or something like that. So I thought it was a good movie. We bought it because I wanted to support the project, and so I would say probably an 8 out of 10.
All right. Also a gold, a little shinier than Robert's gold. See, that's the thing I like about the black and gold is I don't have to give it like, too specific. It's just like basically a
Coward.
thumbs up, thumbs down style. Now you mentioned it as a project. So was there some kind of a, I don't know, not a GoFundMe, but like, was this like a kind of a thing that was like you're supporting something in particular? Like, was this based on?
I don't think it's
Supporting
support. I just wanted to support a decent movie that kind of is, it's near to my heart because we've adopted my son through foster care, and it's not, most stuff that puts out the message is more important than the quality of the film. And you see this in a lot of Christian movies that are just terrible. And the acting's terrible. And I thought this was a quality project that still promoted a good thing. If you think fostering through CPS is a good thing. I'm a little more conflicted than I was. I was still a status fact when we started our journey to adoption. And so I'm a little more conflicted about it now than I was back then. But I mean, I still think there are kids that need homes. So I think this is a good way to put that message out there and try to recruit more people to adoption without it all being about you should become adoptive parents. It's a quality story that kind of has that theme running through it, I guess.
That's a good point. Yeah, I am definitely conflicted in terms of CPS. It's an agency I definitely am against, but they do some good work. They do rescue some kids, but I don't know, for every kid they save, how many are they horrifically kidnapping away from good parents for nothing, like you said, like for having some weed or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or different medical opinion.
Or a different medical opinion. So are you adopting away kids from a perfectly good parent, or are you adopting kids that desperately need a safe environment? It's difficult. It's obviously on a case-by-case basis, but yeah, it's not so cut and dry.
It reminds me of the Bastiat quote where, you say that if we're against government education, we're against education. Well, no, we're against the government providing it. I'll put that whole quote on the show notes page. I'm just kind of paraphrasing it, but to argue against the government handling something doesn't mean we're arguing against the thing happening. We're just saying it shouldn't be done through aggressive violence and extortion to get the funds for it and be run in a bureaucratic manner where they fail forward and get bigger budgets, more power by doing a poor job. So anyway, that's been our show, everyone. Rachel, you've been a very excellent guest. As always, we'd love to have you back again in the future. We'll be posting the episode that you've done with the foster person. What was that? Episode 92?
95.
95.
Krista McIntyre. I'll send you the link.
All right, that sounds good. And then also, I don't know if this is like totally a for sure thing, but I think it's a for sure thing. We will be guests on your show in the coming weeks to take a look at a movie that's related to cannabis, the Matthew McConaughey film, The Gentleman. And so we'll get that on the books. And so people look forward to that. That will be posted at cannabishealsme.com, as well as her episode 95 and whatever you got. What is your next episode coming out that is in the hopper?
Well, that is an excellent question. I was telling Robert while you had bugged out and were rebooting, I've been having trouble getting guests. And I think it's a little bit of me not being as aggressive with trying to get guests on, and a little bit of everybody's just distracted by all this COVID that even though they're not doing anything, you would think it'd be easy to get somebody to come on and talk. So a lot of the people that I've wanted to get on are just busy right now. So I've been trying to line up some guests and haven't had a whole lot of luck. So I don't know when the next episode will be out. It won't be this week, but maybe hopefully the week after that.
Well, mark us down. We'll do it.
That sounds awesome. I'll have to figure out how to use StreamYard. I may have to get you to give me a tutorial.
Yeah, well, I can just host it like we're doing here and just give you the file.
That'd be awesome because my technical ability goes down. Exponentially with every day I get older.
Yeah, my age goes up, technical ability goes down for sure.
Yeah. It's like, where's that button? And it's right there in my face. God, I've become my mother.
Well, again, thank you very much. And people can find you at Cannabis Heals Me and find that episode on The Gentleman, which we have not yet recorded. So I can't tell you how good it's going to be, everyone.
It's going to be awesome. Of
it'll
course.
It'll probably be pretty good.
How could it not be?
Just like this episode, and just like next week's episode, where we're going to be talking about the film on Netflix called The Platform, which is communist propaganda about
the class system.
The class system, yes. So that'll be a fun one, Robert. And we're gonna have Scott, the musician who goes by the moniker Captain A, join us. He was most recently with us for Enemy at the Gates, and he was also on for Crazy Heart, and he may have been on for something else as well. But he's a good guest. He's a good guy. He's also from Texas. Steers and queers and CPAs, foster moms, and musicians from Texas. So I don't know what I'm doing here, but anyway, that'll be the episode next week. And Rachel, if you can stick around for a little bit longer, we'll be doing some Kathleen Turner Overdrive, which is available for Patreon supporters. Gets a little more bonus content out there, so check it out at lastnighters.com/Patreon. Also, if you want to have a nice carry holster, the Urban Carry G3 is a super nice holster. Check it out at lastnighters.com/G3 and get your own. I'm wearing mine right now, super comfortable, sitting down. Don't even notice it's there unless I think about it. And looks like I'm packing, if you know what I mean. So anyway, I'm going to stop running my mouth here. This is episode 123, lastnighters.com/123. And you can also find it on Launchpad Media, where they're always launching new ideas in your direction. Check it out at thelaunchpadmedia.com. And we will say good night from last night, everyone. Peace out.